So I left off talking about the number 8 and its connection to Mercury and Saturn, and how it's like an occult number, and it has to do with like wealth and power and money and all that kind of stuff. And I also mentioned in the previous videos how I think that the universe was originally made up in the form of like vortex math, or by using the 9 solfeggio frequencies, and that possibly Satan or some enemy of humanity created an inversion of what was already in existence, which ended up creating the Metatron's cube, which is basically vortex math with an inverted version of itself overlaid on top of it. I've also talked about the number 1 and how it's like an androgynous number. Basically, it's both genders, or it can change the gender of one number to a different gender. Like, they say that the odd numbers are masculine and even numbers are feminine. And so it's like Adam and Eve and odds and even. And basically, number 1, if you add 1 to like 3 or something, so 3 is an odd number, you add 1 to it, it becomes 4, which makes it even. And so for that reason, the number 1 is androgynous. And so I think number 1 is kind of like, maybe Satanic or something, because basically their overall goal is to make a one world everything, like one religion, one government, one race, one gender, everything. They want one everything. And so it's obviously an occult agenda, and then number 1 is androgynous, and Satanists worship like a androgynous goat-headed idol thing called the Baphomet, which, is just another thing that I think makes the number 1 somewhat evil, or, negative, or something like that. They, for some reason, like that number. So basically where I'm going with this is how I said that the universe was created with the 9 solfeggio frequencies, or vortex math. Basically, there's like 9 numbers, and they're like 9 good numbers. And basically, there was an overlaid thing put over it, which created Metatron's cube. It's basically an inverted vortex math. And in a previous video, I showed how you can make 24 points around Metatron's cube and write a Fibonacci sequence on those points. And basically, if you reduce the numbers down to 1 digit, like you do in numerology, it creates a pattern and stuff, and basically you end up having the numbers 3, 6, and 9, like on vortex math, how they're on the triangles. They're on both triangles on Metatron's cube. So basically you have like a right side up vortex math and an upside down vortex math, like totally mirrored. And so it's pretty weird. So it kind of shows it's like an inverted vortex math when you do that. And so basically there's an evil number 9. And it's pretty weird. So 2 numbers that the elite or the occult people are really fond of are the numbers 8 and 1. And you add those together and they make number 9. There's a lot more to number 1 as well. The number 1 is basically the letter X as well, because X in Roman numerals is 10. And I know that X in the English language, in the alphabet, it's the 24th letter, I believe, and so that is number 6 in numerology. And so there's the whole thing about the X equaling 6, and that's true as well. But I think it also has the energy of 1 as well, because 10 is 1 in numerology, and basically 1 is how I said androgynous, and it's like a somewhat evil or something, and it's the agenda as well. So the X symbol could be 1 because it's 10 in Roman numerals, but it could also be 6 because it's the 24th letter in the English language. But the symbol X was also known to be associated with Nimrod. Like that symbol was for Nimrod or something. It was his symbol, and it was actually not necessarily the letter X though in like our language. It was actually the letter Chi, which basically looks like an X in the Greek language, and it was the 22nd letter and that equals 4. So it could also have the energy of 4 as well. So 4, 6, or 1. And 4 plus 6 equals 10, which is 1, which is kind of weird. But also the letter chi in the Greek language, it meant like Christos, kind of like Christ, like meaning anointed or Christ, And so it's like, pretty weird that happens to be the letter. And then also chi, that itself it means like electricity, like the electric energy going through your body, and you can like harness that or use that in some way to have abilities or whatever. So it's pretty weird. So I think that the letter X or the symbol X is associated with the cube as well, and how I mentioned that the numbers 4, 6, and 1 are all associated with the letter X. Like 4, like a square has 4 sides, and that's what a cube is made out of. 6 is like what a hexagram is, like a hexagram has 6 sides, and that's what a cube looks like from a certain angle. And also the fact that cubes have 6 sides. The number 1 is the symbol X in Roman numerals, and you can see an X in the cube, like there's Xbox, and there's images of X, like the letter X or the symbol X within a cube, and some company logos and stuff use that, and it's just kind of interesting that that's the thing. So I mentioned that the symbol X was associated with Nimrod. It was like a symbol for Nimrod. And Nimrod was known to be like the father of Freemasonry. And he was like the one who ordered the building of the Tower of Babel and stuff. And he kind of was the first one, like some think he was the first person to try to make a one world government. He was like the first one to make a one world order type thing. And and we know that part of the plan is to have the new world order basically run off of AI. AI is going to play a big role in the new world order. And I've mentioned before that I think AI is basically ancient. Like it's been around forever, and like I think all technology really has been around forever. And it's just kind of been hidden, people like only certain people know about it, and at other times it's widespread, but yeah, basically it could have existed all the way back then. And so it's possible that at the time of Nimrod, when he was trying to make his one world order, that he actually was using AI, that AI was part of it. And the thing that's interesting is how X is associated with Nimrod, and X is 10 in Roman numerals. AI, when you use numerology, A equals 1 and I equals 9. And when you add those together, 1 plus 9, it's 10. And so, and how I mentioned the other two numbers associated with X would be 6 and 4. They added together, again, equal 10. So it seems like the number 10 or 1 and 0 are very, they're definitely associated with the symbol X. And the thing that's interesting too is that like computers and stuff use like the binary code or whatever, and it's basically just ones and zeros. That's kind of like how it communicates or whatever. It's like that's what it reads, and 1 and 0 is 10, and so it's just interesting. And so AI probably uses the binary code, and AI is 10, and it X and Nimrod, and yeah. So I've been talking a lot about the number 1 and the number 8 and 2 and also number 10. And I mentioned before that I think 0 might be associated with the number 8, because the number 8 is basically like 2 zeros stacked together. And like I said, in an octave, the 8th note is a starting over point, and it kind of represents like continuation and repeating, like the Ouroboros or something. It's like, and 0 is like the beginning, and then 8 would be like the starting over point. And the number 8 on its side is like the infinity sign. and it kind of represents, continuation, repeating, and that kind of stuff in time. So basically, A is similar to the cube, or has a relation to the cube, and the number 1 is, associated with Nimrod, and the number 10 and X, and yeah. And also the fact that the numbers 0 and 8 have some kind of connection there, that they might be the same or similar. And so basically 1 and 8 might be similar to 1 and 0. And those are the numbers I've been discussing so far. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the symbol X though. So X is kind of like associated with the number 6, obviously, because it is the 24th letter in the English alphabet. And so 2 plus 4 equals 6. And so it's the number 6 in numerology. And also the word 6 itself has an X in it, and also the word hex. They both include the X letter. And so I think there's a lot of reasons why the symbol X is associated with the number 6. But it's also seen throughout a lot of other things, like a lot of companies and stuff, or TV shows, or other things just have the symbol X. There's X-Files, X-Factor, Project X, Exxon, Texaco, SpaceX, Twitter, which is called X now, X Marks the Spot, X Games, Xfinity, X-Men. Also, there's Xbox, and I thought it was interesting that there's also GameCube, and GameCube kind of has the hexagram as the logo, so it's Xbox and GameCube. And I mentioned earlier that the colors black and white are associated with games for some reason. And so I thought that's kind of weird that this is also, there's 2 game stations that, one has the Xbox, and one's got a hexagram on it. I also think that X-Men's kind of weird because I've been talking about how the number 1 is androgynous, and basically X-Men could be also interpreted as someone who is no longer a man, so a transgender person basically, which would be like androgynous pretty much. And so it's interesting that that's something else that's associated with the symbol X. Something else about the letter X that I thought was kind of weird is that it can also make a Z sound. And I heard that in ancient cultures and stuff, like certain cultures didn't use the letter Z, or they didn't allow it because they considered it like an evil S. It was like a backwards S. And also when you make the sound, the Z sound, it like makes your mouth kind of grin, like a smile, and that I think correlates to the like Nephilim clown theory and all that kind of stuff, which is interesting as well. But yeah, so basically the letter Z is similar to the letter X in that way, that they can make the same sound. And there was also the demon called Zozo that was, there's a whole story about the Zozo demon. He was, from the Ouija board or whatever, and it's really strange. And Zozo is just Z-O-Z-O. And then there's also, like tic-tac-toe, and like hugs and kisses is also a XOXO, which is kind of strange. If X makes the Z sound, then XOXO is kind of like Zozo in a way. But who knows? It's strange. And also, the Z's are kind of associated with sleep too, and I thought that's kind of strange, but who knows? So I mentioned before that the letter X is associated with Nimrod, and I believe Nimrod's birthday was actually December 25th, which is Christmas, and we call Christmas Xmas sometimes. People call it Xmas, and it's kind of referring to Nimrod is what people think. And also the fact that Santa Claus is kind of based off Nimrod, basically. So as I've been saying, the symbol X is associated with Nimrod, and I believe it's also associated with the cube, and possibly like Metatron and Hermes and Mercury and all that stuff. But I think there is another way that Nimrod could be tied or connected to Mercury in some way. Apparently some people have identified Nimrod with Marduk, the Babylonian god. And Some people have said that Marduk could be the Babylonian Mercury. Nimrod and Marduk are often linked due to their association with empire building and the concept of a powerful early civilization. Marduk was known as the chief god of Babylon, and his temple, the ziggurat, is considered to be the model for the Tower of Babel. The Greeks associated him with Zeus, and the Romans with Jupiter. Marduk was later known as Bel, a name derived from the Semitic word Baal, or Lord. The mythology of Mercury begins back in Babylonian times, where Mercury was known as Nebo or Nebu. Nebu was the son of Marduk, the king of the gods. Nebo became the scribe of the gods. It was his job to write down the laws and edicts of Marduk and to communicate them to man. Marduk later became the Greek Zeus and then the Roman Jupiter. Nebo became the Greek Hermes and then the Roman Mercury. There's no direct, universally accepted connection between Marduk and Nimrod, but some scholars have theorized that the biblical figure of Nimrod, the builder of Babel, might be associated with the Mesopotamian god Marduk, especially given the city of Babylon's significance in both narratives. It's interesting that Nimrod, who is known as the father of Freemasonry, could possibly be connected to the god Marduk, who could possibly be the same as Mercury or the father of Mercury. Apparently, another symbol that is associated with Nimrod is the heart symbol, and it's also associated with Baal. And like I mentioned, Baal was a name that was given to Marduk later on. The Chaldean word Baal, B-A-L, means heart, very similar to the word Baal, B-A-A-L. In ancient Near Eastern religions, Baal was a deity associated with fertility, storms, and agriculture. Baal worship involved sexual rites and the use of sacred pillars and poles, which had sexual connotations. The heart symbol is associated with love. Baal is associated with sex. I've talked about the solfeggio frequencies before in my previous videos, and apparently the frequency that activates the heart chakra, like the true one, is actually 639 hertz, but oftentimes people associate 528 hertz with the heart chakra, and 528 is often called the love frequency, although it seems like not everyone agrees on that. And if you add them together, the numbers 5 plus 2 plus 8 equals 15, and 1 plus 5 equals 6. And, I've been talking about the number 6 so far in this video, like how the number 6 is associated with the symbol X and the hexagram. It's been said the love frequency is thought to resonate at the core of everything, connecting our heart, our spiritual nature, and the divine harmony. Again, sounding like the frequency 528 hertz is some sort of mediator, possibly connecting us to a higher or lower power. The Merkaba, the supernatural chariot that can take your soul to the spiritual realm, is basically a three-dimensional, six-pointed star, and 528 hertz is 6 in numerology. The number 6 is associated with the symbol X, a symbol that is associated with Nimrod, who is a person who has been identified with a Mesopotamian god who is associated with Mercury. And Mercury is the same as Hermes, who is the same as Enoch, of which there are two, the son of Cain and the son of Jared. And one of those two, most likely the son of Cain, is the same as Metatron, who is associated with Metatron's cube, which contains within it the Merkaba, which is a three-dimensional, six-pointed star. Previously, I have mentioned the Holy Trinity and how it relates to the numbers 3, 6, and 9, and the number 9 especially, because it is 3 times 3, a trinity of trinities. And vortex math shows the trinity with the 3, 6, 9 on the triangle, and Metatron's cube has 2 triangles, and the upside down one like totally mirrors the 3, 6, 9 that would be on vortex math, which basically shows that there's like an inverted Holy Trinity or a demonic Holy Trinity of some sort. Something else that relates to the Holy Trinity, as well as everything else I've been talking about, is alchemy. The goal of alchemy was not just to transmute base metals to gold, but on a more esoteric level, it was also to basically transmute the mind from a lower level of consciousness to a higher one. In alchemy, mercury, sulfur, and salt represent the tria prima, the three fundamental principles of matter, with mercury symbolizing spirit, sulfur representing the soul, and salt representing the body. Alchemists adopted Aristotle's theory of the four elements: earth, air, water, fire, and sulfur, mercury, and salt can be seen as representing combinations of these elements. Paracelsus believed that these three principles, when separated, refined, and recombined, could lead to the transmutation of base metals into gold and the attainment of spiritual enlightenment. I've heard before that the tria prima, or mercury, sulfur, and salt, each contain each other, meaning that mercury contains all three principles, mercury, sulfur, and salt, but is mostly mercury, and the same goes for sulfur and salt. Which reminds me of vortex math and how the numbers 3, 6, and 9 are all considered to be spiritual. It also reminds me of the 9 solfeggio frequencies and how when they are visualized and shown as 3 overlapping triangles in a form resembling vortex math, the frequencies that are on the points forming the triangles are just variations of the same number. For example, the frequencies that are on the points that correlate to the 369 on vortex math are 639, 963, and 396. It is also similar to the Holy Trinity, the Spirit, the Son, and the Father, which has also been shown in the form of a triangle, where God is shown in the center and connected to all three of the others with the word is, and the Spirit, the Son, and the Father are separated by the words is not, showing that the three are different, but they are all God. Like how in alchemy, Paracelsus believed that the three principles could be separated, refined, and recombined to transmute base metals into gold and attain spiritual enlightenment. Mercury could arguably be the most significant metal in alchemy, and some people have said it could also be the same as azoth. Azoth was believed to be the essential agent of transformation in alchemy. It is the name given by ancient alchemists to mercury, which they believe to be the animating spirit hidden in all matter that makes transmutation possible. Once again, mercury can be seen as some sort of mediator connecting the lower to the higher. The symbol for Hermes and Mercury is the caduceus, a winged staff with two snakes wrapped around it. The same symbol is portrayed on the androgynous Satanic Baphomet. The caduceus is very reminiscent of the Kundalini serpent that is said to rest at the bottom of the spine, which could be made to coil around one's spinal cord and go up to the top of the head, activating the chakras as it does so, and eventually open the third eye. There are various ways people have claimed to accomplish this, such as yoga and a proper diet. Some people believe that they can open their third eye with drugs, and some people say that by practicing semen retention, they can do this. Semen retention is the practice of abstaining from ejaculation, and is an ancient practice with roots in various spiritual and philosophical traditions. And some proponents claim that it offers physical and mental benefits, while others suggest potential risks. Earlier, I was talking about other words that sound but aren't spelled exactly the same as the prefix mer, which is the beginning of the words Mercury and Merkaba. Those same letters, mer, can also be seen in the word Hermes. Another word that contains those letters is sperm. The symbol for Hermes and Mercury resembles the serpent wrapped around the spine of someone who has opened their third eye, and apparently you can accomplish that by practicing semen or sperm retention, and I believe it also relates to the more esoteric definition of alchemy, of which mercury is heavily involved, where you essentially transmute yourself or your consciousness from a lower state to a higher one. In esoteric traditions, especially Hinduism and alchemy, mercury, or parad, is symbolically linked to the sperm of Lord Shiva, or the metallic soul of the sacred sperm, representing the potential for transformation and spiritual awakening. In alchemy, Mercury is seen as the metallic soul of the sacred sperm that needs the fire or spiritual energy to rise and transform. The rising of Mercury through the medullary spinal canal opens the chakras, the magnetic centers of the human being. The surplus of sulfured mercury crystallizes in the astral body, giving it life, and then in the mental and causal bodies, leading to spiritual development. The symbol of Hermes and Mercury hides the secrets of alchemy and the Greek mysteries, representing the perfected man, the primordial atom, created through the refined use of sexual energy. Hermes or Mercury is also a messenger between the divine within and the personality, a guide through death and rebirth, and a conductor of souls. In theosophy, Mercury is seen as the thinker, the reincarnating ego, and the link between spirit and matter. Mercury's influence operates differently depending on whether the mind reflects activities of matter or is turned inward upon those of spirit. It's important to note that Mercury is also an environmental toxin that can cause male infertility and abnormalities in sperm morphology and mortality. So I've been talking about how the Tria Prima mentioned in alchemy is similar to the Holy Trinity in Christianity, which is also similar to 3, 6, and 9 in vortex math, which is also similar to the 9 solfeggio frequencies. If you were to compare each triangular model and match each point on the triangle to its corresponding component, it would look something like this. Sulfur of the Tria Prima would be the father of the Holy Trinity, the number 9 on vortex math, and the solfeggio frequency 396. Mercury of the Tria Prima would be the spirit of the Holy Trinity, the number 3 on vortex math, and the solfeggio frequency 639. And Salt of the Tria Prima would be the son of the Holy Trinity, the number 6 on vortex math, and the solfeggio frequency 963. I believe these match up quite well. They all make perfect sense to me. The main thing that stuck out to me is how Salt, the sun, and the number 6 all correspond. According to the book The Zodiac and the Salts of Salvation and other sources, the human body is essentially composed of 12 cell salts, and Jesus, the Son of God, came to earth in a human body. It's not a coincidence either that the words salt and salvation share the same prefix. I've mentioned before that the number 6 could be seen as both spiritual and physical. I believe spiritual numbers are thought to be masculine, and physical numbers are thought to be feminine. But I also heard that odd numbers are considered to be masculine, and even numbers are feminine. According to vortex math, the numbers 3, 6, and 9 are considered to govern the spiritual realm, and the rest of the numbers are said to govern the physical realm. As you can see, the number 6 could be considered both, since 6 is both an even number, but also part of 3, 6, and 9. Jesus was a spiritual being incarnated in a human body comprised of salt. I also think it's fitting that Mercury corresponds to the spirit and the number 3, and that sulfur corresponds to the father and the number 9. In the center of the diagram that represents the Tria Prima is the yin-yang symbol. In the center of the diagram that represents the Holy Trinity is God. In the center of vortex math is the number 0. And in the center of the diagram that represents the 9 solfeggio frequencies is the frequency 528 Hz. Following the same method of comparing the models and matching the corresponding parts, the yin-yang shown in the center of the Tria Prima is the same as God on the Holy Trinity model, 0 on vortex math, and 528 Hz on the solfeggio model. One last thing I thought was worth mentioning due to its possible connection to all of this, is pi. Pi is approximately 3.14, and it was first used for this purpose in 1706 by William Jones, probably as an abbreviation for periphery, which is interesting because it's like peripheral vision. Your peripheral vision is basically half a circle, and pi is measuring a circle. It became the standard mathematical notation roughly 30 years later. If you divide the circumference of a circle by the diameter, you will get approximately 3.14. It may be safe to assume that the diameter of a circle is roughly 1/3 of the measurement of the circumference. If you divide 1 by 3, you end up with 3.33 repeating. Some people have speculated that the true number for pi should be 3.33. The slight difference from 3.14 to 3.33 might just depend on how perfect the circle really is. The number 3 could represent the Holy Trinity, and I mentioned earlier that the number 3 corresponds to Mercury and the Holy Spirit. 3.33 could be 9 in numerology, and I mentioned before that 9 is a trinity of trinities, since 9 is 3 times 3. The number 9 has many strange things about it, and in one numerology book it said that the number 9 might as well be 0. If you minus 9 from any number, the numerical value remains the same. The only other number that occurs with is 0. For example, if you minus 9 from 110, you get 101. And if you add the numbers together in those two totals, 110 and 101, it's 2 for both of them. And you can do it with any number. If you minus 9 from any number and you add the number together, it's still the same numerical value. And the only number that happens with besides that is 0. I mentioned before that 0 on the vortex math model corresponds to God on the Holy Trinity model. But I've also mentioned that the number 9 could represent God, since there are only 9 numbers in existence, and the universe was said to be created with the 9 solfeggio frequencies. And both the number 9 and 0 have a common characteristic. Something else that is worth noting is that according to Christian belief, in the beginning, when God created his plan for humanity, 1/3 of the host of heaven went against God and followed Satan, and 1/3 is 3.33 repeating. It's possibly the same number as pi and has the same numerical value that could potentially represent God or the Holy Trinity. So there are a lot of words that contain the word pi within it that are kind of interesting, like piety, spiral, piano, pinecone, pineal gland, pilot, epiphany, and pioneer. And there's also piezoelectric materials, which can be used to capture energy from vibrations, like in roads or buildings, converting it into electrical energy. And the word piezoelectric also contains the prefix for zodiac or zoo or zoology, which has to do with animals. And the zodiac is kind of like the sky above us, and maybe in some way that's involved with capturing the energy. There's also a Bible verse, Proverbs 7:6, and it says, "For at the window of my house I looked out through my lattice." Lattice is used on pie crust, a pie crust where the top is made by weaving strips of dough together in a crisscross pattern. Lattice could be like the ley lines of the earth, and pi could possibly be measuring that. Lattice is also kind of like X's, and there's a saying, X marks a spot. And X is also a symbol used for Nimrod, and 10, and 6, and everything else I've been talking about.